So, MVP watch so far, North America and Europe. Let's talk about it. Let's see who's in the lead and all that. And let's go over the process of how we determine MVP for RLCS. So, the way that works is for the MVP process is all the casters get votes. They get a first, a second, and a third place vote. Then also the people that are working RLCS from Psyonix, the ones that are, like here every day or whatever, watching the streams, they also get votes. So same thing, first, second, and third place. Then the stat guy, like Slock with Octane.gg, he also gets a vote for first, second, and third. And then obviously first is worth 3 points, second is worth 2, third is worth 1. Everyone has like slightly different philosophies for their MVP voting, which is fine. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But the way I look at MVP is I look at, obviously how good they're playing, how valuable they are to that team, and also how good they played in the very important matches. And we'll get into that, why that's very important with NA in a second. But let's go over to the documents that we have, or where I wrote down my MVP watch. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to list one player from each team, or at least for the top 5 picks for the MVP watch. And I will let you know how likely it is someone surpasses them in my mind, or how close it is. But I'm just going to list one player per team just to make it a little bit easier. Because I feel like when you're voting for MVP, it's very difficult to have 2 players from the same team in your MVP voting. If you're looking for most valuable player, then it would actually hurt both of them in my mind. But first off, we're going to talk NA. So I want to know in chat who you guys got for NA. Who's your top 3 per se? That is something I want to look at while I set this up for the MVP watch for my sake. And then we'll go through my list. We'll start at 5 and we'll work our way up. So I want to know the top 3 for you guys. All right, here we go. So we're going to do top 5. Look at that. They fit in there. Oh, no one wants to give me their top 3, huh? We see some earlier. We had NA MVP. He actually didn't write anything. Oh, wait, no. KDOP for some reason. NA MVP. Europe MVP Scrub. OC MVP Fairy Peak. All right, Oscar. I see what you're doing there. I like it. All right, let's see. Classics. Classics is the best. Justin Chicago Gimmick. It's not a bad list, for sure. Justin Gimmick Torment, maybe Garrett. Typical Justin Gimmick. All right. Justin Kronovi Gimmick. Okay. I'm liking this. All right. So let's start with my list here at number 5. At number 5, I have Kronovi so far. I think he's having an extremely solid season. For NA, I feel like MVP is going to come down to these last weeks because I feel like the big 3 are all playing each other. But also, the other 5 teams, they're all playing very important playoff matchups, and it's going to determine whoever really steps up in those series will get my MVP vote. Right now, I have it as Kronovi from Rogue, playing really well. He's played solid in every series in my mind. Maybe a little bit more shaky in the Cloud9 series than anything, but he's been super solid this entire season. And then I would say probably a distant second on that team would be AJ. I feel like he's starting to step up, and it's great to see. And he could, if he plays really well towards the end of the season, could surpass Kronovi on that team for me. But he had a rough early going, so I have Kronovi here as my number 5 so far. This also means I have no one from EG, which we'll get to in a second. Like EG, let's talk about them real quick. I feel like Drippe is the best player on that team right now, but I feel like his defense has been pretty subpar, and also EG is not playing well in general. If I had to choose someone for a number 6 spot, it would be Drippe, but I feel like his defense has been relatively poor so far, but there's still time to make up for that. But for right now, he would be my number 6. But again, at the end of the day, for MVP voting, I'm only going to have 3. Very likely going to come from the big 3, but, we'll get there when we get there. Number 4, Sypical. This is mostly because of that EG series, and that's when I talk about big series. Like, if you have a big-time player in a big-time series, then they're going to move up a lot in my mind. So I have Sypical here. I still feel like he would probably be the best player all in all on this team so far for Space Station, but there's still a lot to play. But Sypical played out of his mind for EG. We'll look here for goals per game. I think he's relatively high. Yeah, he's top 5 here. So he's number 5. Not a lot of assists. He's mostly finishing goals, but he's having some big-time goals. So I got him there. And again, it's mostly from that sweep. There's still a lot to play for Space Station. They only have 3 games played, so still a lot to determine there. I feel like any one of those 3, they could step up. Right now, Sipical has a decent lead. Probably then AXB, then Sathu. But Sipical for now. But if Space Station makes a run towards the end of the season, maybe beats a big 3, then I could see Sipical maybe even get my 3rd place spot, depending on what's going on with the other guys. So, next team, I'm going to go with G2. I have Chicago. He's been a big-time player so far for this team. He's, I believe, he's like number 7 in scoring. But he also has a lot of assists per game. I think like number 3. Yeah, number 3 in assists per game. But he's just had some really solid like game 5s. I felt like the one game 5 I thought was really good was against, I think it was Rogue. I can't remember. But he's really stepping up when it matters most. He's had some defensive issues. But for the most part, I think he's got a small lead over JNaps for G2 because I think JNaps has been a defensive god for G2 throughout this season. And I think if JNaps has big series versus Cloud9 or Energy, he could easily surpass Chicago. Rizzo, on the other hand, he's like been just a super support player. Like he's not really doing much. He hasn't had to do much. I expect to see him get more involved when they play Cloud9 and Energy. But for now, he really hasn't done a lot. I doubt he'll pass Chicago or JNaps unless he has 2 really big series. But because like down here, he's like near the bottom of the list for both assists per game and goals per game. And that's not like the only stat that matters, but he's just doing what he needs to do. But it's been mostly just support, like letting Chicago and JNaps run that offense. So I think it'll be either Chicago or JNaps, depending on who has bigger series versus Energy and Cloud9. That's if they make top 3. Like if G2 loses to both, and Space Station has a pretty good finish towards the end of the season, I could see Sipical or someone else from Space Station probably grabbing my 3rd place spot over G2. But for now, that's what I have. Number 2, I have Gimmick right now. Like I think Gimmick is actually like this one's actually tough. I feel like Gimmick might be carrying Cloud9 harder than Justin for NRG. But I still have a number 2. It's close. Like I feel like he could easily surpass Justin in my mind. But Justin's just putting up insane stats. It's absolutely nutty. He's the best player in NA right now. But Gimmick, I think, might be more valuable for Cloud9. It's tough. It's really hard. But for now, I'm putting Gimmick number 2. That one's going to come down to those last 3 games. So NA, nothing is set in stone here because the big 3 have not played one another. So these could all change, but I think Gimmick has a pretty sizable lead on Cloud9. Maybe Torment a little bit as well. Could be in for that 2nd place run, but we'll see. Like Swishy obviously is scoring a decent amount of goals, but I think Gimmick is doing a great job setting up those plays. We'll see Gimmick here. He's tied for number 1 in assists per game. He's got the most goals plus assists. And Torment, he played really well towards the beginning of the season. Some clutch goals versus Splice and all that, but I think in the end of the day, I would have Gimmick, then maybe Torment. But I think Gimmick, maybe by value alone, for who was the most important team, he might be number 1. I've been kind of going back and forth, but Justin is my number 1 so far, just because his stats are absolutely nuts. Leading in goals per game, leading in assists per game, and he's 2nd in saves. So he's been everywhere on the field for this team. So Justin's just having an absolutely nutty season, and no one wants to see Justin with the ball alone, except for the fans, obviously, and the viewers. But no one on the opposite team wants to see that happen. So I have Justin number 1 there. But Gimmick and Justin are relatively close in my mind so far. But honestly, none of that matters right now. For NA, it's going to be... We should probably center this. It'll probably look better. Whatever. It's fine. It doesn't really matter who's in the lead right now because it all comes down to those big 3 matchups. That's really the only thing that matters. So whoever steps up in those games likely will get the MVP because no one's really been like super phenomenal where like if they come in 3rd, like say Energy comes in 3rd place this season, then Justin's probably not getting MVP because he didn't, play well enough in those series more than likely. But I think it could be anyone from the big 3 right now. And who knows, maybe an outside chance for like Space Station if they wind up beating one of the big 3 and try and make a run for that number 3 spot. It's possible, but very likely will come from one of the big 3 just to determines who plays really well in those matchups will likely get the MVP. So we don't really know where we're going to go yet for North America. On the flip side, going to Europe, I want you guys to list out your European MVPs so far. Europe, I think, is more or less probably set in stone for the number one spot. But I want you guys to tell me what you think while I write this out. And I think it's probably a two-man race for MVP in Europe. Well, I guess two-man race from two different teams, but you could add in the other players from said team to also compete for it. But I think it's a two-man race. Scrub, Mets, Cooks. Scrub, Mets, Cooks. Everyone's saying that. Okay. Most people are. Fairy, Ignite, Scrub. Scrub, Fairy, K-Dop. Scrub, Fairy, K-Dop. Yeah, there you go. All right. Let's start it off. 5, I'm putting Cooks here for now. I think he is carrying a ton right now in the bricks, but to me, value, you got to win games to have value, right? At some point. So I feel like if they don't win any more games, like, sure, he was valuable to the team in their losses, but that doesn't really matter. Like, value has to exceed losses to turn into wins, right? At some point. So I have Cooks here number 5, but if the Bricks make a run towards the end of the season, he will drastically move up that list. But I feel like he's been really valuable for their team, but they keep losing those games, so does it really matter? I don't know, honestly. Next one up, I have Alpha. So Barcelona, they've only played 3 games, so it's hard to tell exactly where they're going. In the one win they have, I feel like Alpha was the best player. Like I also thought when they played Vitality, Devo was by far the worst player on the field in that series. Then Devo pops off last week, obviously, versus TSM. They still lose the series, but because Devo played so bad versus Vitality, I couldn't put him above Alpha just yet. There's still time. Obviously, Barcelona, there's still a lot of time, but I think Alpha and Devo are relatively close. But they've only played 3 series, right? So I think those guys will flip around a lot, and one of them will probably move up into the top 3 if Barcelona finishes pretty strong. But for now, I have Alpha. He doesn't have great stats, honestly, but he made some big-time plays in their first series, and has just been super solid all in all. And that's why I don't really have them that high in this list yet, because I feel like they don't have great stats across the board, except for Devo scoring 1 million goals versus TSM. So I'm not really strong on anyone from Barcelona yet, but they're only 1 and 2, so we'll see how that goes. Next up, I'm not very strong on this one either, but I have Farah number 3 actually. Farah, I feel like has been playing really well for PSG. They have their 2 wins and having a super solid season. But again, I'm not sold on literally any of these 3 at the bottom. There's a large gap between them and the next 2 people. But I think Farah's playing pretty well. I don't have anyone on Triple Trouble just because I feel like Ronicky really stepped up, but also he played terribly in their earlier series. Cassio's slowly stepping up. He also didn't play amazing in their early series. It might be Cassio, like if I had to put one of them on the list. But I want to see more from Triple Trouble before I put them on this list. But they would be number 6, probably Cassio. I probably have Cassio right now, but it'd be close between him and Ronicky, I guess. But I have Ferry number 3. And that's only because, again, I'm putting one person per team. I wouldn't, like, honestly, this top 5 would be all TSM and Vitality if I was putting every single player on. But for now, this is what we got. Next up, number 2, Metsonoris. After last week, hot damn. What a day for him. He was the best player for them, I felt like, when they played Barcelona. And then he was the best player on the field, maybe even, honestly. Probably not on the field, but when they played Vitality. He was playing out of his mind. They did get that loss, but those are one of those series where you're like, all right, that's definitely MVP consideration for sure. I think iIgnite... Oh, sorry for the text. I think iIgnite is probably a close second, and I think if they finish off really strong, iIgnite could surpass him, but he would have to do a lot. Metsonoris looking good, could win MVP for the whole season if TSM winds up going 6-1, and who knows, maybe Vitality drops the series. Could happen, but I think it's very unlikely. And I think, honestly, we don't even have to watch the last 2 weeks. I think no matter what, probably my number one pick is going to be Scrub. Scrub is having a phenomenal season, been the best player on his team, I think, probably all 3 weeks, or at least 2 weeks of the time. Scrub Kill is playing insane. If I had to put a number 2, I guess K-Dop. I think K-Dop and Fairy Peak are relatively close, but probably K-Dop for number 2. But Scrub's been playing out of his mind, just completely out of his mind. And I think they've already played all their tough matches. So as long as they don't royally screw up in these last 2, and if Scrub doesn't royally screw up, I think Scrub probably wins MVP for me. And this isn't necessarily MVP for the RLCS because everyone has votes. And who knows, maybe those votes will get split between Scrub and K-Dop, which will force Metsinoris to get MVP. Like, I think there is a case that happens. But I think, honestly, Scrub's kind of a shoo-in. For me. I don't know what you guys think in chat, but I don't see anyone beating him. Like, even if K-Dop or Fairy Peak have, like, amazing series versus Triple Trouble or Mouse, I think Scrub has done enough already where Scrub wins this MVP for me, personally. But we'll see. We'll see if, like, how insane they get in their last 2 series. But Metsinoris, I think the one way he wins it is he's probably the clear number 2. And I think some people might flip-flop Scrub and K-Dop for their voting. So if that happens, then I think Metsinoris could kind of steal this MVP. But we'll have to see. But I think that's the problem. Like, one year, I think it was Niels Cook won MVP. The only reason why he won MVP that season was because everyone basically had him as number 2. Because they're like, yeah, he did great for Excel. He's the only reason why they finished 4-3 or whatever. 3-4, 4-3. Where they finished like 4th, 5th seed. He had a great season. All his stats were great. Everyone put him number 2. The problem was half of us put Chaussette, half of us put Bluey for PSG that season, and that's why Niels Cook wound up winning that MVP. No one actually thought he should be MVP, but no one could decide who was MVP, so he wound up winning it. So personally, for my votes, what I'll probably wind up doing is for Europe, right now at least, I'll probably have Scrub, Metza, then K-Dop to just try and, like, if there's enough K-Dop backing, I would rather K-Dop win it than Metza, if that makes sense. I don't know. But we'll see. For NA, I think honestly it would probably be Justin Gimmick and Chicago in this list right now. But again, it just determines what happens in those big 3 matchups. And that's why it's so different than Europe, because Scrub's already played all the tough competition. Unless Triple Trouble continues to play really well. He's already played the best of the best from Europe. So I think he's already got it locked in. But that's what I got for the MVP watch. Let me know what you guys think in the comments on the YouTubes. And obviously, if you think anyone was terribly wrong in Twitch chat, I love when YouTube just decides to hate on you guys. So there's the MVP watch. Oh, I should have brought over the Europe stats here. Hold on. I'll do that real quick, so you guys can see where we're looking for at least top 5s. Like, Cookseer's leading goals per game right now. Scrub Killer, then K-Dop, then Devo, then Farah. Sorry, I was talking too much. A lot, and Igniter all tied there as well. Turbo's slowly coming up that list as well. And then assists per game, we have Scrub Killer number 1, Mystic number 2, Fruity, Bluey, Tadpole, and then a K-Dop once again. And if you guys want to see some saves per game, sure, why not? Fairy Peak leading by a really large margin. Chaussette, Tigray, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Cookseer, and Mystic. So that's the list. What about the 6 other teams below top 5? Like, there's no one really in MVP consideration, I feel like, on those teams, because none of them have played well enough. For NA, I talked about Drip A for EG, but Ghost and Splice, like, you really can't have anyone from those teams right now, just how poor they're playing. So it all comes down to, like, if they wind up winning games, then they might move up the list. And then EU, we talked about Casio, and then Mouse, like, a lot would be on that list, I guess. And what was the other team? Who did I forget? Like, a lot would probably be higher than Casio right now. But I can't think of the last team. Who am I missing? Am I just dumb? I think I'm just dumb. Oh, Dignitas, obviously. Duh. Wow, that's really funny. Dignitas. I don't know. I guess Turbo right now, but honestly, that'll change depending on how they do throughout the rest of the season. That's really funny that the one team you forget is Dignitas. But right now, there's really no one on that team yet either. If Yukio plays like he did in that last series versus Mouse, which I thought he was the best player by far on their team, then we'll see. But yeah, right now there's really not much to say about Dig until they start winning games. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But that's the MVP watch. There's some